Hello, all. This is Dr. Dave Masc talking to you about reciprocity.com. The E is written with a 3. And in this particular video, I want to talk about doing an MBA or doing a master's and which one is actually better. So if you don't know me, I'm a professor of innovation strategy and entrepreneurship, and I created this whole reciprocity project to give back as much as I possibly can. There were so many people that helped me out to get through graduate school that I decided to pay the favor forward and help you out as much as I can. So the question of choosing which one you should choose, doing an MBA or doing an MS, really depends on what you want to do for the rest of your life. That's an important question for you to think about. And I do, so to give you a backdrop of what I did an engineering degree in my undergrad at the University of Waterloo, which is a really good, respectable university in Canada. Then I did my Master's of Applied Science, Management Science at the University of Waterloo. And then finally, I did my PhD in strategy or general management at the Ivey Business School in Canada, which is a very respectable school as well. They're all sort of top ranked schools nationally and internationally, really, really good stuff. But anyways, the decision to choose one or the other is really unclear. And I wish I had a little bit more clarity when I was making that decision what one to choose, because I could have done that or I could have done that. And I was really sort of struggling with that decision. But it really depends on what you want to do for the rest of your life. And I'm really practical with some of the advice that I give on this channel. So to be clear, I want to clarify an MBA is Master's of Business Administration. That's what you do in a business school. And then there is the MS, which is a Master's of Science, and you can do an MS in many different disciplines. Engineering is the Master's of Applied Science. That's the one that I did. But you could do an MS in finance, for example, which is a really respectable degree. And you could do an MS in chemistry, right? So it just depends on what you're interested in and what you want to do. So from an educational perspective, they're all going to be equally really good in terms of the degree that you get, in terms of the knowledge that you actually acquire during the process, right? And the other thing is in terms of the financial monetary outcomes, they're all going to be pretty good and pretty respectable. What's the biggest difference that's going to dictate on how much money you're actually going to make? It's not necessarily the degree so much. It does matter, right? There is going to be some sort of variance, but a bigger determinant is what school you go to. So, if you graduate from Stanford Business School, for example, you're probably going to do pretty well. And if you go to, I don't know, the International School of Baking, and then you do your MBA at the International School of Banking. Not banking, baking, like making cookies, you're probably not going to make nearly as much because it's just not recognized and it just doesn't have the same sort of signaling effect. So there was this one person a while ago, Michael Spence, I believe that's his first name. He actually won the Nobel Prize on this particular idea. I believe he did. I'm really confident he did. It was all about signaling theory, and it was trying to. So his understanding was like, how do you actually, as a new candidate, how do you communicate that you actually are doing, that you're a competent person? And the way that you actually signal that is you get a good education, right? So it's not necessarily the knowledge that you possess, but it is the education at a certain school that signals to other people that you're a competent person. So some schools are going to signal that effect. And it's, some degrees are going to signal that as well if you get it from a particular school. And it's going to make a big difference in terms of what you're actually signaling, right? So you're signaling some sort of skill set to other people when you go to these different certain schools. So it's not necessarily the particular education that's really important, but it's also the signaling effect that you get. And so you have to weigh that. And some schools are really spectacularly good at signaling to other people that, oh, this person's really competent. And that's what you're trying to look for. It's the education is going to be really good at all of them. The monetary effects are probably going to be more determined by this sort of status and signaling and sort of skill-based things that you're trying to communicate to other people. And that's really what it comes down to. That's a really important thing to think about is, how much money you're going to make really depends on, what are the outcomes of that particular school. And so I'm going to get to that in 1 minute, and what you should do. The other thing that you should think about is there are different career prospects. So you end up with doing different things if you do an MBA versus an MS when you're done. And the other thing that what you're going to do with an MBA is going to be much more of a manager kind of thing, style, or you're going to go into management a little bit more than what you're going to go into in an MS. It's going to be very good and it's going to help you. The MS might get you into a management role, but you don't necessarily have to, and you're not going to start out in sort of a management role. But in MBA, when you get your first job, and you might be in sort of a really low level management role when you go out into the world, right? That you are doing something. And then also the other thing that's important with both of them is thinking about the sub-discipline that you're going into, right? So an MBA, you could sort of specialize in accounting, for example, and become an accountant, certified public accountant, or, something along those lines. You can also go into finance and get your CFA, certified financial analyst, and that will really, really help you out as well. So you can go into the different sub-disciplines, and there's wide variances in the sub-disciplines in terms of the outcomes that you have. Or you can, in an MS, you can choose to go in, well, if you go into chemistry, you're going to understand chemistry a lot. And so you're probably going to be a chemist, right? At the end of the day, compared to, and you're going to go into more analytical roles. And that's an important thing to think about, is what kind of roles that you're going to go into at the end of it. And so one is going to be, the MBA is going to be training you to be a little bit more of a management type, which is a good thing, right? It doesn't mean that it's a negative thing. And the other one is going to be, the MS is going to be training you to become a little bit more of a specialist in a certain discipline, whatever that might be, right? And then the Masters of Applied Science, the thing that I did, is kind of in between. And so you might do something like industrial engineering or something like that once you're done, a degree like that. Now, in terms of, the educational styles and stuff like that, so an MBA, there is a strong influence to do more kind of group style sort of work. And this is across all business schools that I know of. There is that, and it's kind of modeled after the Harvard Business School, the Ivy Business School in Canada as well. INSEAD does this, but really what they're trying to do is sort of simulate what it's like to actually work in groups. And then the other thing you're going to be doing a lot of MBAs end up doing this, is going to consulting after. And so what you do in consulting is you kind of do like a quick group, and you work together on a project for a bit, and then you disband and go and do, work with somebody else, and you work in another group, and then you disband and you continuously are doing that. So you got to get that practice of working in a group for a little bit. And that happens in the business world too. If you didn't know this, you're going to go into committees and things like that. And then you're going to work in a group together. And then disband or go into different ways. And so this sort of group thing is getting you to train, just giving you practice to, speak up during a group conversation, or sort of leading the discussion in groups, and knowing how to lead and follow at the same time. That's a really important skill to learn. And so that's what is taught a lot. And the other thing that's taught in business schools is a lot of sort of case study stuff. So you will go through different cases, and it's not like willy-nilly, right? Like cases are actually pretty in-depth kind of stuff that you might actually read. So it depends on the skill set of the school and of the other students, as well as depending on, who's there and the style. So it might be, you might read 10 pages for a case, or it might be 30 pages, and the 30 pages are really in depth and really going into a nice understanding of something, of a particular topic. So it might be credit risk, right? So you might go into really in depth in terms of credit risk of a particular thing, and understand all the nitty gritties of that kind of stuff. So it's really fun, and it just depends on the style and what you're doing. The other thing, to think about is the MS is going to be much more coursework oriented. So it's going to be more, or if you did like an undergrad, it's going to be an extension of that undergrad, and just going into more depth into sort of technical issues and technical areas than what you would have done with an MBA, right? So an MBA is a smattering of all these different kinds of subjects and putting it all together and trying to make something of it. But a MS is going to be, let's specialize in this particular thing and get a little bit more of a better understanding of this particular thing. So, some topics you would definitely study. You'd maybe take a couple of courses on statistics and get a better understanding of statistics. Maybe you'd get a couple of courses on the theory behind whatever you're looking at, right? So I don't know, maybe it is, maybe you'd go into more of physical chemistry. If you're doing chemistry, you take a couple more courses on that and a couple courses on heat transfer, and really just narrow down and just get some better understanding of what that is, and maybe read some of the latest literature on that area. And so it becomes much more focused, and it's really an extension of an undergrad degree. That's the biggest thing, but it's also just, getting the state of the art and really going in depth into the state of the art and reading some of the latest literature on that. So it's really interesting. But it's training you more to do research and focus on, pushing forward with research. And maybe the next step after that would be to do a PhD. Now you can do a PhD after you do an MBA as well. I got a couple of videos on that. You can watch that as well. But really, it just depends on what you want to do with the rest of your life. So this is what I would do. This is a recommendation that I would do. So I study behavioral decision theory, within organizations. So we look at, what do people actually do, or what organizations actually do when they make decisions. And it's a lot different than what we think sort of theoretically they do. And it's kind of interesting. So this is what I would do for you to make this particular decision. So I want you to sit down and think about where you want to go. So two things. I want you to think about what kind of industry you want to go into. And maybe it is consulting at the end of it. And that's fine. Or you want a smattering of different industries, so you want to do consulting. So you look at consulting. And then the other thing you want to look at is, like, what role do you want to play in the future? Maybe it's 10 years from now, right? So that's probably a good goal, is to think about 10 years or 20 years from now. Where do you want to be? Then once you sort of figured out the industry, so maybe you want to go into forestry, and then you want to be a manager in a pulp and paper mill. Well, then you look to see what kind of degree that they actually have. And you could do that easily now with LinkedIn. You just, type those two. You just type those in the search box. Maybe it's, manager, pulp and paper industry. And then you just search for those particular people. It'll pop up. And then you can see what those degrees that those particular people have, right? And then you could say, oh, you know what? And then record on a sheet, actually record, maybe get like 20 different people and record what the degrees that they actually have. So if the vast majority of the degrees that they actually have are MBAs, well, then do an MBA. Or if the vast majority of the degrees that they have is an MS in chemistry, and they're all coming from this particular school, then do that, right? Like that's kind of the logic behind it, is you want to do what other people have done in the past, because that's how you get into that route. So maybe it is going into the, you want to go into the film industry and go in and sort of really understand Hollywood. Well, maybe then University of University of Southern California might be a great way to go and to do your MBA there, because lots of people actually have an MBA there. So if you don't know this, where you do your school is usually a predictor of where you're going to end up living. It's a pretty strong predictor if you look at where most people end up, staying, as they go in, or the subject that you're interested in. So you want to learn about, you want to learn about agriculture, like fish farming and stuff like that. Well, then you're probably going to end up going to Maine or something, or maybe on the West Coast. Right, you might be going to Vancouver, for example, and sort of getting into the industry there, right? And so you will end up going where there's demand for the skills that you have and the skill set that you have, and that's usually at those schools that are close to those particular industries, are the ones that are specializing in those particular industries, right? So NYU is really good at finance, right? They have a strong sort of finance program. And so you might go to NYU because you're going to live in the city, or Columbia too. You want to live in a big city, right? And they have a financial industry there. But anyways, that's what I would do. I would look for what people have done in the past, and just kind of model what they've done and do that route. And that's going to get you to where you want to go. So, but the first thing, that toughest part, is figuring out, what do you want to do in 10 years from now or 20 years from now? And I think most of you kind of have an idea of what you want to do, but you just have to explicitly state that and then go that way. And you're going to have a better understanding. So Hopefully this answers your question and which one is better, an MBA or a master's, and whatever, a master's applied science or an MS. They're both equally good. They're amazing degrees, but they just get you into different directions with the rest of your life, and you want to figure out what is the best for you. You have to look what other people have done in the past and just kind of model what they've done in the past. And that's going to get you a little bit further and is going to help you out a long ways. All right, so take care and have a wonderful day. Bye.